Welcome to the Finding Phil podcast, where I set out to find Phil through discussions of recovery and self-discovery. Hi, my name is Phil.
In that walk, there's been a lot of peeling back the onion, and that's where that insecurity was revealed. And I'm still working on that, because I don't think that one's going to go away.
Hey, welcome back, friends and forever family. Thanks for joining me for another episode. Today, I decided to meet my next guest outdoors. We're trying to do our best to follow all the social distancing rules, so we decided to meet up at the park. We found a picnic table that was at least 6 feet long so that we could, keep that 6 foot distance. We may or may not have measured. But anyways, we sat down, we enjoyed the outdoors. It was a beautiful sunny day here in San Antonio, about 78 degrees. There was a little bit of background noise I wasn't expecting, like construction there at the park. But hearing birds chirping and kids playing in the background, that was also a welcomed background distraction. But we sat down. My next guest is somebody I've known all of my recovery. We go to the same support group, Celebrate Recovery. And in our open share times, we just tend to connect a lot with the same thoughts and feelings, especially on our next topic, which is insecurity. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you a very disciplined man. He rides his bike to work almost every day. He is very in touch with what's going on the inside, and so therefore I had asked him to become not just my friend, but my sponsor. Please welcome Chris. Well, it's awesome to have you here, Chris.
It's kind of funny, I was just sitting here on a bench in a park that I like, and this guy shows up with... I think he's doing surveillance, honestly, folks. You need the video with this, because if you don't have it, then you just think we're talking about stuff that ain't happening. But he did. He pulled up, and here we are in a beautiful park.
Yeah, and I got to talk about these nice brown furry little things. Actually, I'm impressed that they're working, because we had a nice breeze coming in a second ago, and they worked pretty well. But this is what you would call in the auto scene or auto industry, I guess, is a dead cat. But I'm going to call this a dead dog, because I actually makeshift sewed these together last night out of one of my son's old stuffed animals. It was old. Well, no, it was actually already in the pile of stuff to be thrown away, and he had already dissected all the guts out of it. So
okay. We're in the clear.
He was already a dog fur before I got to him, but yeah, I actually made, because I've committed to not spending money unnecessarily during this whole COVID-19 thing with cash flow slowing down. I gotta be conservative. Yeah, I could have bought a couple of these for $40 a piece, and gone and picked it up at Best Buy.
If you ask me, they came out of the box from the store. I wouldn't know the difference.
Well, it's working out. So yeah. And then, of course, we didn't know that they're going to be doing construction behind us here at the park.
I scheduled it. Yeah. It's to help.
But that's all right. I don't think it's that bad. Obviously, we're outdoors because we're trying to practice social distancing. Chris and I are actually, you can't see it, we're 6 feet apart. There we go. He's got his tape measure out.
I can't use this anymore. He touched it, folks.
I got the Lysol in the bag too. But hey, I asked Chris to be my guest today because Chris is my sponsor at Celebrate Recovery. One of two of them.
Two of one of them?
One of two sponsors. I was talking about that actually in my last episode. Yeah, in my last episode, I was talking about how, being flexible and having to be able to catch the vibe with your sponsor.
It's important to connect.
Yeah, and it's not like I wasn't vibing or connecting with my first sponsor, who's still a sponsor, but it was the vibe. It was in the connection. And And I think the thing that I felt you and I were relating the most about was when we'd have our open share, is when we started talking about insecurity. It's like you'd talk about it or something, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you would talk about it, and I'm like, or I would talk about it, and then you'd have, oh yeah, that made me think of this. And so that was really the biggest reason why I said, hey, Chris, I already have a sponsor, but would you be willing to do this for me? But you were also the same one that said you don't need to fire your other sponsor. And I'm glad I didn't, because he's been really good as well in my recovery.
I tend to look at things a little differently than most folks, and not to say that I'm weird or something like that, but I think there are so many resources out there that you just have to reach for everything that you can kind of get your hands on and get what you can from it. In some cases, there's a person and you just can't get a lick off them. There's just nothing. You try to have a conversation and it just falls dead. But there's other folks where you have some highly relatable, and I think that's where you're getting at. Is it's a highly relatable discussion that you and I have from time to time. And it hits those notes.
So did we decide which we were going to do? Were we going to go ahead and talk about insecurity?
That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I'm totally insecure about talking about insecurity, but we can roll with that, because that's what I have to do these days. I have to take the things that bug me the most and kind of have a little chat with them, whether it involves somebody else or not. And sometimes it's me, sometimes it's me and God, and sometimes it's me and someone else. I think Celebrate Recovery is an excellent avenue to be able to discuss those things. The dynamics there are different, and this is not a diss or anything on AA, but I can only imagine those groups are somewhat restrictive in really how deep you can go in a certain direction, and obviously that has to do with your spiritual aspect of it, and spiritual being, God and the Christian, and the walk in the Christian faith. I've actually heard some people tell me that they've had some bad experiences when they tried to get on a direct line to the Christian God.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody's familiar with AA, they know that their reference is basically a God as you define him. And I can hear those things, and that's fine. Some people can't hear those things; they get very irritated by it. What I do is I reinterpret them, because I know where my faith is, and I know where my God is and who my God is. It's not a tree, it's not a rock, it's not something I dreamed up because of my dilemmas. It is somebody that created me from my mother's womb, kind of thing. And I can go with that. And that's why I say I'm a little more flexible than most folks. Maybe it has to do with my upbringing. I have no idea. I'm a conservative person, but yet my family is very not conservative. So
that was really cool, because you just kind of touched on the mission statement a little bit of my podcast. Well, part of my mission statement, and that is that whole idea of truth is truth.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, I often call it plagiarism when people of the world or different ideologies in this world start to embrace truths or ideas that really originated with God and can be found in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to think that it's an original idea of some sort, and it's not. And that's why I call it plagiarism, because God wrote that. Yeah. That was his truth first. So
if I can interject,
sure.
With that truth in mind is something that I'm coming on 3 years now here, and in that walk, there's been a lot of peeling back the onion, and that's where that insecurity was revealed. And I'm still working on that, because I don't think that one's going to go away. Funny enough, the desire from my fleshly addiction on the surface, I really have a hard time even seeing it anymore, which is good. I'm very grateful for that. I'm thankful that doesn't bother me that much. But to be honest with you, the things that it was covering up and why I was covering up by the drinking, that insecurity is a tough nut to crack at times. It rears itself in restlessness just during the waking hours, restlessness in sleep, dreams, but it comes back to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. I have challenged one of the people that I have deep discussions with. I guess I'm his sponsor. Yeah, I'm his sponsor. And, I have to challenge him on his perspective. He'll come at me with a lie. And I'm not saying he's lying to me.
Mm-hmm.
He's lying to himself,
Mm-hmm.
or he's biting on the lie. And I'm almost inevitably, one of the first things I say to him, I go, how much of that is true? I go, I want you to look at that. And I'm not asking for the answer right then and there, because I already know, because I'm exactly what he's going through. I'm either going through it at the same time, which is, I got to love God's sense of humor. I do. I'm speaking to him and the words are coming right back in my ears like these headphones. It's awesome. But it's the truth. I tell him, I go, if you sit and think about it, and the wheels I can hear the wheels turning, even though he's not saying anything at the moment. And sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's on the phone. And you can just tell that he's sitting there and he's taking it in, and he realizes, wow, I'm biting on a whole lot of fat lie. Very unhealthy. And the hard part is it grabs us so hard, and it's so hard to shake off. It is like losing weight. So if you gain all this fat, how hard is it to drop it? It's real easy to put it on,
Mm-hmm.
real easy. But to actually shake it loose, you've got to do a lot of hard work to get it done. And I think that's where I am with my insecurities. Is I as soon as I start feeling that agitation of sorts, I go, okay, what's driving this? What's going on? Okay, sometimes it's really blatantly obvious. You're just having bad thoughts go through your head, and you're making stuff up, really making stuff up. It's like you're going to town with it, and you're like, and I've told the guys this many times. I go, I will audibly say, "Shut up." I will. And these are thoughts that come in my head, and I'll be standing there, outside, and all of a sudden, I'm going through, I'm hearing my little thought parade here, and I just go, shut up. And fortunately, nobody's around most of the time, so I don't get caught as a loony.
Yeah. Because the enemy's a liar. He's the father of lies.
He's a master.
The Bible says that.
Jeez.
So let me ask you, how far into your recovery before you realized that that your hurts were rooted in insecurity? How long did it take for you to have that realization that, okay, it's, the addiction is not my problem.
Mm.
It was a symptom of my problem, but this is really the root, or one of the roots of my problem.
You and I have probably known each other almost the entirety of my 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think you mentioned somewhere recently it was 2.5 years for you,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
And that when you said that, I'm like mark time. Oh, okay. There's about a 3-month gap there, it sounds like. So anyway, that coupled with, I know it was at a CR meeting where I said, you know what, I'm obviously paraphrasing, but you know what, I've peeled the onion back, and I'm realizing that underneath in a deeper layer is this insecurity. And I guess I always knew it was there, but how long have I been actively working on it in my recovery? I would say about 1.5 years. I think it was probably about 18 months into that. I'd say almost for a good year before.
Yeah, I think it took me about 1 year before I started to realize, that there was some real rootedness in that, and I'm still dissecting it.
Well, the 12-step study,
Yes.
the step study that we
Yeah.
did, was very helpful in leading up to that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it quite peeled that layer back. It was after being able to apply a lot of the things that I learned in that step study that was able to enable me to be able to see a little bit deeper in. And it's funny, as I was thinking about it, I had a feeling we'd get on this topic. And part of my background for the last, it's coming about 20 years now, is the Hebrew roots of our faith. Jesus was a Jew kind of thing, right?
Yep.
And one of the things that the Jews do in their study is called parties. And it's basically like a peeling back of the onion. They look at the scripture, and there's obviously what it says on the surface. And then you dig a little deeper, and you dig a little deeper, and each deeper level has, different meanings. Obviously, deeper meanings. And I think with each and every one of us, that's the same thing. And it doesn't matter whether you've got any kind of a bad background or not. I think everybody's got certain things that have happened in their life that they stay with them. And it could be good, could be bad, could be both. I don't know anybody's got a perfect life that, something didn't, put them off along the way, and they still got a little bit of something in the closet there.
Most of us, too, will quickly admit that we get our good traits or our good characteristics from somebody influential in our life. I mean, think about the sports star, right? He wins the Super Bowl, or somebody, wins an award. They're usually quick to thank mom and dad, or mom or dad, or, like I said, somebody influential. So just to kind of back that, and of course, sometimes it can come as a negative trait too, but
could have been beaten as a child or something like that.
Yeah,
yes, there's definitely, and it can be both. I mean, like I said, we all have where we came from.
Right.
I guess that's the best way to put it, where we came from. And that has so many different looks to it. One of the things that I remember saying along the way is everybody's struggle is their struggle, and it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I didn't have a heroin overdose in life versus somebody who did makes our struggle no different. It is the same struggle because it's our shoes that we walk in. We don't walk in anybody else's shoes, and that's what makes it unique. I think that's one of the things that CR I've heard over and over and over again in these things is we'll get a new person that'll come in, and they said, I'm getting something from every one of you. And nobody condemns, nobody's trying to judge, and I think it goes back to that highly relatable, because everybody's got something that they can understand from their perspective, from the shoes that they walked in or are walking in. It comes into play.
So, how did you make the connection between that insecurity and how it played out in your habits?
Because in the insecurity, I want to forget about it. I don't want to.
Okay.
I don't want to have to face it.
Right.
That's the easiest thing,
Right.
If you can do something that will distract from it, and to a certain degree, I still do that. I have a sense of humor that will cover it up. If I'm insecure, I can get, really, really over the top class clownish, and that's probably got a little bit of masking over an insecurity of some sorts. It's interesting. Oop, sound like somebody fell in the water.
It did sound like
it. Growing up, I was supposed to just help out in a play.
Okay.
And this was in elementary school. I had no role in the play whatsoever. Somebody didn't show up. They were sick or whatever. I can't remember what it was. And I had one line to say, something about a crystal flask.
Okay.
And they gave me the line, and they said, just go out there, and all you have to do is say blah, blah, blah at the Crystal Flask. I mean, we're talking maybe like 8 words. I went out. I couldn't say a word. Stage fright. So there's an insecurity there. And that stayed with me to this day, that was there. And I know where it came from in retrospect as a, much more mileaged person. That, there were things going on that my subconscious put away in the back of my mind that even parts I can't get to today. Every now and then I get a glimpse, but for the most part it's been locked away, and it's part of that protection mechanism. It's keeping me safe. It's disturbing to a certain degree because it bothers me I can't remember certain things. But I think it's important that at least I can recognize it. And that's that connection you're asking about. How does that connect? How did I make that connection? I think that was your question, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Making that connection was really that, once again, it goes back to the step study. Step study forces you to go back.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go back and rewind as much of that tape as you can, and as painful as it can be at times. I can remember going out to, this park was one of the places I came to.
Yeah, you told me about this park. I came here as well.
This to me is where I need to go and work through things. I can't do it in a room. I can't do it with a counselor. I can't blah, blah, blah. All these things. To me, it's got to be somewhere where I can kind of, it's not like I'm getting in touch with nature or something like that, but there's something about it that allows for that mental interaction for me. And I can remember going down to South Texas, one of the state parks down there. I drove probably 2 or 3 hours to get there, and I got there, and it was not the prettiest of places, but it was outside. There was nobody around, and I was going through some pretty deep inventory stuff about people that had hurt me, people that I had hurt. And, just going through those things and really trying to be honest and open enough to get myself some more insight to it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said earlier, that helped pave the way to where I could pick up on the insecurity after that. At first, it was just the hurt of it all. The step study was golly, there's just a lot of hurt back there. I knew it was there, but the drinking allowed me not to have to face it any, under its terms. It was under my terms, being lying to myself terms kind of thing. So I think that's the connection gets made by doing that, by getting an inventory. And I don't think that you could honestly do this on your own, albeit we were tasked to go and do it on our own. And then we would come back as a group, and everybody would share to a certain degree things about the questions that were in the study. Your inventory was shared more intimately with really just one or 2 other people. But it's going through the inventory, having to sit down and do it according to that part of the step study. I think that's where a lot of things get opened up.
Yeah. And going through it alone, I think the important part of the being alone is being in a quiet place, to get away from the distractions.
Yes.
So for the introvert, there might not be this huge effectiveness to getting alone.
And I am a bit introverted, so
for me though, it's very difficult. I mean, for me to get alone and to get my mind out of, to get my mind in the now,
I got you.
In an alone place, in a quiet place.
Focal.
Yeah. Very difficult for me because I'm an extrovert. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a podcast. I felt like it fell in line with my giftedness, and it's also helping me live out the 12th step. So,
there you go.
But I apologize for the distraction a second ago. I had problems the way I had my headphones hooked up. We were talking about that
Right.
before we started. I didn't have a proper little piece of equipment.
I can tear off one of my earpieces and give it to you.
No, it's okay. I think we're good to go. But so my last question, I guess, doesn't have to be the last one, but my next thought would be, have you developed any tools that you've been, now we've identified some of the root of our hurt, and we've also identified how it affects our behaviors. But what about tools for go-to tools for when you see insecurity at play? And it's your go-to.
Yeah.
Man, I'm a fixer. I like to have something. I like to have an answer to things. I like to say, if this happens,
Yep.
I go here. If
Yeah.
this happens, I go here. So do you have tools that you've been using when you start to see insecurity at play in a situation, in a relationship, or even just in your job?
That's a good good thought.
Putting you on the spot, am I?
No, because the job one becomes very, very. I'm not going to say day to day, but it happens quite frequently. You're making stuff up. The boss wants to talk to you. Suddenly you're just like, okay, what did I do wrong, kind of thing. And I know where that stems from. I've already identified the insecurity in myself, right? So you say, what kind of tools? There's a couple of tools that I can think in there. They really revolve more around words, and the first one that comes to mind for that is recognize.
Okay, right. So identify.
If it goes back to what I said earlier, is if something's bothering me, I have to you have to acknowledge it. That means you're recognizing it. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It's not wrong to have that feeling, and that's important. Because I think what happens in the addict cycle is you don't want to recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to not recognize it? You go into your addiction,
Mm-hmm.
whatever your addiction may be, and that's another great thing about CR, because it's not about the addiction, the specific addiction.
Yeah.
Okay, it's about what that addiction you're using that addiction for, and once again recognizing
It's a fight or flight response, because it hurts. It's how does insecurity hurt? Well, I don't know. It hurts. It's an emotion. It's a painful emotion, is what insecurity is. So as soon as you find yourself in a painful situation, you either go into a fight mode or a flight mode, and that flight mode is acting out the addiction.
Yeah. It's an instability, and I think that's disturbing for me, is to have it as an instability. So recognizing it is probably, I'm trying to think if there's something before that. No, I think recognizing is the key to at least open the door. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to have the continued thought of, oh, why does he want to talk to me? Right? At that point, then you can just sit there and kind of temper it with the recognition. Okay, you see what's going on. You know what's going on. So you don't have to turn into the flight mode. Okay? Now you're standing your ground. You're not running from the dog. You're standing there, and now you're looking at the dog, and now you're trying to shape the dog up. Okay, is that dog going to bite? Is he really going to bite? Okay, what if he bites? Okay, it's not going to be bad if he bites. Don't worry about it. I know I'm just speaking kind of just superficially as far as it's a man and a dog.
Right.
But people are like that too. I know that there's folks that there are situations that I describe forgetting the line, one simple line. But there are situations where people get very anxious over because it's a fear. And fear is really tough at times, and it can rule us. And I think there's another one of those things about recognizing, okay, you're afraid. Okay, it's okay. Don't take it to the point where you're allowing that to paralyze you. So recognizing is the first thing. And then the second one is another tool in the toolbox is perspective. I would love to be able to, if I had any capabilities of being able to be a preacher or an author, I think perspective would be such a powerful thing for people to understand in a very, very deep and concerted way. It's that perspective that gets us going in the wrong direction, because we think just because you looked at me a certain way or said something a certain way, and in this day and age, text has no emotion. I don't care if you put exclamation points with it or not. It doesn't matter. It has no emotion. It's just word.
But our minds want to attach an emotion to it.
That's exactly right.
And so you typically attach the wrong emotion to it.
So it used to be that probably it's safe to say that writing was an art. Yeah. People knew how to convey their feelings in words, and it was probably better understood. Now with, JK, like just kidding, all these abbreviations, it gets very superficial. So to actually read something and understand it is very difficult. So anyway, I don't want to get too far off a tangent there, but keeping things in perspective. So if I get an email or I get a text, it doesn't matter whether it's a text for the wife, the kids, the boss, the friend, whatever, don't try to read too much into it. As someone who is in recovery, and I say in recovery, I think I'm going to be there for here on out. Yeah. And I know we've talked about that before, that this is a never-ending thing, and
absolutely,
it's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. It's like the studying, getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Yeah. We are getting deeper and deeper into what God has made in us as individuals.
Well, I don't think you got on too far of a tangent either about the texting. I think that is a good example of having a tool in place to deal with insecurity in communication, I should say. For instance, I've gotten insecure over text, especially from a customer.
Yeah, sure.
That
they're the boss.
Yeah, and I read it and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so upset with me. Mm-hmm. And those are the worst situations, because I'm a lot less likely to just go ahead and call them up and let's clarify what's being said here.
Yeah.
And what happens later on, though, I do find out that, well, no, this is just how they communicate. And that's the other thing. You don't, because there's not somebody that you're, for example given, I get texts from my wife daily, and I know how she communicates. I know the tone of her voice through a message. But yeah, with text messaging, if I start to feel insecure about a message being conveyed, I just call. I just go ahead and call. And if they don't answer or something like that right away, I just, I call it a bookmark. That was another tool my wife and I developed early in our marriage. If we started to feel like we were going to a bad place. We haven't actually practiced this in a while. Maybe we should, but if we felt like we were going down a bad path in our communication, we would just say, "Hey, can we bookmark?" And we disagreed that bookmarking was just to say, we're going to both pause this. We're not going to leave it unresolved. Mm-hmm. It'll be resolved. That's why the bookmark's there.
Right.
But it's going to give us time to both cool off, both pray, both, and a lot of the time when you do that, you start to see their perspective on things a lot better. But
most definitely.
So I guess if I can't get through to somebody right away through a phone call, I'll just try to bookmark that. And sometimes the insecurity falls off all on its own. I don't need to necessarily resolve it. But that's part of my problem. I think I need to just let more stuff go, period.
Yeah. I've always had a kind of philosophy is to, not to be as sensitive. Mm-hmm. Not that I was ultra sensitive, but it just, a little bit more like water off a duck's back.
Yeah.
Albeit nobody's perfect, and myself is included, because there have been times where, it'll get the best of me and I act more on the emotion than I do on the rational side of things. It's important to, like you said, to put those bookmarks in. You don't want the heat of the moment to get out of control, because there's some things get tough to pull back. Words can be really devastating at times, and there's a lot of times they're just unnecessary to say some things that we say. We do it out of a spite or a push-button response, and I think we can do a whole lot better, myself included, once again. I always love it when these things come right back in my ears, even though I've got headphones on. If I didn't, they'd be coming right back in my ears. And I've become a lot more aware of that these days, words coming right back in my ears that I'm trying to express to somebody. I can hear that, yeah, you got to work on that. Me. And I'm sharing that with somebody else because they're having the struggle too. And I think that, you and I have had those conversations where, we're highly, relatable at that point. And, the words are coming right back in one another's ears that are coming out of our own mouths because we realize that those are truths, going back to where you started. This is truth.
Truth is truth.
And it's okay to disagree,
Sure.
Especially in a marriage. I think it's important to disagree. When you can't agree to disagree, that becomes problematic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we filled up the time just perfectly, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, man. I mean,
we can go swimming now, right?
Yeah.
The ducks might not be happy.
The ducks might not be happy. We might mess up the moss in the water too. The algae. So
let me say this one thing, because
man.
I did share this with my daughter just yesterday. She's a teacher.
Yeah.
And so she's been teaching from home, and I shared with her that it's sad to say, but there's folks out there that who already were in the struggle. There have been some people taking their own lives, and then there are the people who are stuck in their addictions, and these are tough times for folks like those.
It's really tough.
And what you've done as far as coordinate for our little group to get together is something that is very much appreciated, and it's highly functional because when we have to socially distance like this. That makes it a little bit better than it has to be.
Yeah, and I'm thankful for our leadership higher up, the people we don't even know in the Celebrate Recovery program. I'm thankful that they went ahead and gave us the permission to do online meetings.
Because normally that would not transpire.
Normally, and this is a temporary fix.
But I know that there are other groups, and I can only speak for AA, knowing that they've done that.
Yeah.
I haven't plugged in, but they have that available, and I'm sure that all the other ones, the NAs, SAs, and all the other A's.
Yeah, so listeners out there, if you are part of a group that hasn't been able to meet since these the social distancing orders have come through, and you haven't been taking advantage of technology, maybe bring that up to your group leader, whether it be AA or one of the other 12-step programs out there. As you heard me say, and do your own research, but I have done this research on my own, and I do know that Celebrate Recovery is giving us temporary permission to do online meetings, and there are some guidelines for that. I might post those guidelines on my Facebook page so you understand what is being asked of people in Celebrate Recovery, but enough of that. I just, that was a good thing for us to talk about.
No, it is. It's very pertinent. We don't know how long this might go on for.
Right.
And everybody's got different degrees of need, and social is definitely one of those things. I am still fortunately able to go to work, albeit it's every other day.
Yeah.
But part of me realizes that there's a social aspect to that is outside of my home.
Right.
It's in a work environment, and even though not everybody is there, it still functions as a social arm of life, and that is no different than going to the meetings. And now that the meetings have been kind of throttled back, we need to make sure that we have to do a little bit of effort on our parts.
Yeah.
And I once again thank you for doing that for us.
No problem. And a little extra prayer to be. Some of us are very gifted. I wouldn't say I'm gifted in intercessory prayer, but I do know people that have that gift. But those of us that don't have that gift, so to speak, the Apostle Paul says that we should actually desire the greater gifts, and we should desire gifts that we don't currently feel like have been blessed upon us. So this is an opportunity for us to think to exercise that gift of intercessory prayer. Pray for the people you know are likely isolating themselves and not connecting during this time, whereas having a regular meeting place to go to, either sometimes for some people I know daily, they find a different group every night of the week to make sure they're always connecting. And man, I can't imagine how difficult this is for people that we're relying on connecting that way. So be praying for those people, and then if God prompts you, reach out to them, or ask somebody else that you think might be closer to them to reach out to them. So anyways, we could go on that for a while. That was almost our other topic. But we chose to talk about insecurity. But thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Phil.
We're going to sign out, and we'll see you tomorrow night, brother.
All right. Serenity for all.
Yes, sir.